Warm this morning. Is the internet not working over here?
It's streaming, so it should be working. What network are you on?
That's a good question. I can't seem to download this.
No,
That doesn't say that.
the links is.
Maybe I'm not connected.
Yeah, you might be connected to the peripheral network.
Linksys?
Yes.
There's two of them.
Just anyone. 5G. Swami DVT.
Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vajinulambita Bhujo Kanakavaratu Sanketanaya Kapitaro Kamalaya Taksho Vishwambaro Dvijavaro Yugodharma Palu Vande Jagat Priyaparo Karunabhataro Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gaurarai Krishna Chitto Sando Tamanoro Vandeham Shri Ramakrishna Abhaya Charano Sako Sukado Paramanando Sundaro Subharapayo He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchan Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Harite Shri Gauri Vaishnava Guru Parampara Ki Jai Shri Shri Dauji Gopal Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai Gaur Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premanande. Good morning. This morning we turn to chapter 1 of the book in progress. We'll read a little bit from that. Sakya Pranay, chapter 1, Hari's Heroics. Unfortunately, here I've forwarded this to my iPad, but the diacritics are not showing up, so it might be a little bit of a problem trying to pronounce some of the words here. But we turn in the immediate to begin our discussion to the 11th chapter of the 10th canto, in the middle of that, verse 35. And we're arriving here having come from a different bhava than the one we're entering into, that of Vatsalya, coming from Batalibhav, and the place of Krishna's childhood, Madhuvan. We're coming to Vrindavanam, Sampravishya Sarvakala Sukhavaham. Tatra Chakrur Prajau Vasam Chakrat Chakata Arda Chandravat. Like I say, the diacritics are not in place, but something like that, right? So again, this is the 35th verse, and we've begun, which is the first of 5 chapters of narrating the Leela, beginning at the point in Krishna's Leela where he has, he's just leaving childhood and entering into boyhood. It's called Seish Kumar. Seish means end in this context, and Kumar means childhood. So it's kind of a sandhyam, or like the dawn or the dusk between day and night, between childhood and boyhood. And it's relative to any discussion of Sakya-rasa as we've been discussing, because this stage in Krishna's age is one of the udipanas for Sakya-rasa. And like I say, it's the focus of the second part of this 11th chapter of the 10th canto. I began my book, Circle of Friends, with the 12th chapter, which is the really beginning of the Brahma Vimohan Leela, that covers 4 chapters. If we include Brahma's prayers, which is the chapter 14, so 12, 13, and 14. The slaying of Aghasura, the bewilderment of Brahma, and subsequently Brahma's prayers. The Leela narrative there ends on a very heavy philosophical chapter of Brahma's prayers, in which he, in no uncertain terms, I should say, establishes Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam, based on his experience, and he relates his experience. And also in that chapter, he pines or longs for to attain standing in Sakya-rasa. This prospect was laid before him at the dawn of creation, when Krishna appeared to him internally and spoke the seed verses of the Bhagavatam, which there are 4. These verses are found in the second chapter, second canto of the Bhagavatam. And in that setting, Krishna blessed Brahma to attain a relationship with him in friendship. So what that's all about, the implication, the significance of that, well, it takes time to assimilate, to understand for a sadhaka. So, of course, in the 12th chapter, which is the beginning of the Brahma Vimohan Leela, Brahma is brought into the picture with the slaying of Aghasura. Everybody is startled, right, as we know. So anyway, I began my book, Circle of Friends, with that chapter rather than this. So in this smaller book, I've gone back a half a chapter, because Krishna's cowherding, in a less dramatic way, if you will, really begins here in the last part of the 11th chapter. I began at the 12th chapter, which is a very dramatic opening. Krishna's blowing his horn instead of Balaram waking everybody up, and a picnic is planned, and they're bursting with enthusiasm. So this Sakya-rasa bursts onto the scene, right? But it actually, his calf herding, that is, actually begins here in the 11th chapter. So we'll read some. I've selected some verses from the chapter, and then it'll go on to the 12th chapter and 13th and so forth as we go through the 5 chapters. But what I've done in this little book is I've selected certain verses that will kind of take us through it, jumping over other verses. And some of the verses are very significant in terms of verses that could be incorporated into one's practice in the pursuit of Sakyabhav, through what Jiva Goswami refers to as mantramayi upasana, to take a mantra depicting Krishna in kind of one frame of the movie of his lila and meditate on it through mantra. Yeah, this will eventually cause the heart to churn and the lila will move within the heart. That's called swarasiki. So, Vrindavanam, Sampravisha. Here, Sukadeva Goswami is speaking, and he says, having entered Vrindavan, Vrindavanam, Sampravisha. So together, the group, it says here, has entered Vrindavan. So where have they come from? Again, right? They've come from Mahavan. That's on the other side of the Jamuna. And what is their impetus for this? They've come to Vrindavan, which would mean they would have to cross the Jamuna. And it's one thing to cross the Jamuna by yourself. It's a formidable river. Well, one year, I spent a month in Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Math with Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj. I was the only visitor there. It was quite quiet and so forth. So I first read Bon Maharaj's commentary on the first 4 chapters of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. I discussed it with Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj. But I bring it up because every day I swam across the Ganga and back. It's a strong river, so you would start here. By the time you got to the other side, you were, down here. Then you have to walk up to here to circle back and to come back in the stream back to the Math. So it was, my point only is it was of course this is now the Ganga here is entering into the Bay of Bengal, so it doesn't get any bigger than this or current any stronger in a sense. Of course, there I shouldn't say that. Up in Hrishikesh, it's narrower, and the current is stronger there. So maybe the current's less, but it's quite broad. At any rate, similarly, the Jamuna, it's a formidable task to cross the river by yourself, certainly by swimming, even by boat. What to speak of moving an entire camp with bullock carts and calves and cows. I mean, Nanda Maharaj is said to have 900,000 cows, and that's only one herd. Every other boy has a father with a herd also, right? And so they've come across this. This is not an easy affair, right? So what is the question then is, what is the impetus for them to do so? One thing we can say in this regard is Braja, which is a Sanskrit word that refers to the entire area. Sometimes it's used in a broad way to include even Mathura, but more often it's used to refer to that which is within the mandal, the circle of Mathura, the Mathura mandal, the greater, like the greater, Chicagoland area, the greater Mathura land area, which includes the rural setting of Braj. So more often the Braj refers to the rural setting and to the cowherd community. And the cowherd community, by its very nature, tends to be on the move because the cows are on the move and they need fresh grasses and so on and so forth, right? So Jiva Goswami, in this regard, in his Gopal Champu, in the beginning of the book, he's describing the wonders of Vrindavan very beautifully and very poetically with so much feeling. And he says that the word Braj means all things possible. If we're able to be a little willing to move a little bit, to be a little bit flexible. What is the flexibility of Gaudiya Vaishnavism? Where does it begin? What did Mahaprabhu say? Trinadapi sunichena tarorapi sahishnana amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. The movement of Braj, the Braj Leela, of course, is sattvika bhavs, anubhavs, right? These are visible movements where, as Jiva Goswami says also in his you can see he's trying to. It's enough that in one sense that Brahma Samhita says all the walking is dancing, all the talking is singing. And Jiva Goswami saying, oh, the poetry of the Brahma Samhita doesn't do justice to it. And what must be the talk? What must be the dancing? What must be the singing there? Right? So it's a place of movement. If we look at the kind of the spectrum of actual spiritual life, actual spiritual life is made available through us through different conduits, through different religious traditions, and because they have one thing or several things all in common, that they are ego effacing, that they amount to, in one sense, at least, the deconstructing of the false personality, that our attachments and so forth, that arise out of our attachments, giving the wisdom as to the illusory nature of the I that arises out of my, when in fact nothing is mine. If nothing is mine, and I think this is mine, that is mine, and the I that comes out of it is as false as the claim that something is mine, which time tells us it's not true. It takes everything away, right? So those paths that include this, which I call ego effacing, these are genuine spiritual paths. And at the same time, they have some differences in them, which, from the Gaudiya point of view, which is a unique insight of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, that it speaks to us about the variegated nature of transcendence. This is a Gaudiya insight. I'll give you an example of what I mean. There's a famous verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, comes in the first canto. There it is said that, no, it's so famous I can't remember how it begins, but
Varanti tat tattva vidas.
What is it?
Varanti tat tattva vidas, right?
Can't hear you. Say it again.
Varanti tat tattva vidas.
Varanti tat. Thank you, Vernishta. Varanti tat tattva vidam. Tattvam yad jnanam advayam. And then Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti, Shabdate. It says that the truth, the absolute truth, sages say the absolute truth is Advaigyan. Advaigyan is different. It doesn't say Advaita, Advaya. It's a different way of saying it that renders or describes the absolute as non-dual, but not in a way that does away with any difference. I could say, for example, this, pointing to my hand, is my body. This is my body. Am I right? Is that true? This is my body. This is my body. This is my body. But this is also my hand. So my hand is my body, but my hand is different from my body at the same time, right? So this is this is kind of like non-duality decorated. Decorating non-duality. This This is Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So it takes this verse in the Bhagavatam, but relative to our point, the second part of the verse says, Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavan Iti Shabdite. So it says it's non-dual, or Advai Gyan Tattva, non-dual knowledge, non-dual reality, known differently at the same time as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Now, other sampradayas, even Vaishnava sampradayas, of which the majority are, will say that this verse is saying that there's one absolute truth alone. Sometimes it's called Brahman. The Bhakti Marg. They certainly have a lot in common, but there's differences as well. Number of differences. Gyan Marg is and Yoga Marg governed by Sattva Guna, Bhakti governed by Nirguna. What is the aim of the Gyan Marg? Nirvishesh Brahma, to enter in an undifferentiated experience of the Absolute and attain what? Shanti, 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 as Rabbi Shankar said last night in our dance, right? Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Did you hear it? Shanti. So, as I often say, well, we want peace, but we want love too. Peace and love. Peace and love. So love requires movement, right? Not being still. When we come to the yoga discipline, then the objective, the goal is the beatific vision of the Paramatma, of Bhagavan Narayan, the vision. Not active service, but the experience. So there's some difference now. We come to Bhakti of the Vaidhi Marg, and we come to Vaikuntha. There's movement there, and devotees, and so there's movement and transcendence. The movement is love. That's what makes it go around. But the higher that we go, if you will, from Vaikuntha to Goloka, Vrindavan, the movement increases. Therefore, you can find, let's say, for example, the Yagyabuk, this form of the Lord accepting sacrifice on Brahmaloka. This is beneath the Paravyom, but in Brahmaloka. How does he appear there? He's very big. He lied out. He's got 1,000 heads and arms, and he's being offered food and prayers, accepting, closing the curtain. He goes to sleep, wakes up, goes to sleep. He's active, but not too active, right? You go to Vaikuntha, well, Narayan is more active, no doubt. But you go to Vrindavan, and Krishna doesn't even sleep at night, right? So the love there is keeping him up 24 hours a day. He has no time. He goes home to sleep only in time to be woken up for another day of cow herding. And what's driving that is the nature of the bhakti. So, at any rate, there are different approaches to transcendence, which would arguably result in different experiences. And there are many traditions, right? And those that are ego-facing have some real spiritual efficacy, some real spiritual power. And so this is the kind of the sensibility or the logic of the devotees. Therefore, transcendence must be variegated in nature. And there must be many faces of God that are all one. They're all God. And they're all something common that one has to practice regardless of the tradition to arrive there. But there are other things that will be added or subtracted, which will determine the face of God one will come in touch with, all of which are perfect. So anyway, the face of God in Braj, Krishna, that there's more movement there, I want to say. There's more movement. And the movement is all the ecstasy. According to the different rasa, the anubhavs will be different. How the cowherd boys move with their arms and legs when they start a journey with their left foot instead of the right foot, whatever it may be. All these are anubhavs of Sakya rasa. What are the anubhavs of Vatsalya rasa? The anubhavs of Madhurya rasa and so forth. These movements, so that's one type of movement. The other is the sattvika bhavs. So certain sattvika bhavs will appear in different rasas and so on and so forth. And then, of course, there's internal differences, emotive differences, and so forth. But it's a very flexible scene in a sense. And to arrive, my point is, at that kind of movement, which is desirable, but all in the Bhagavatam, it says, if we're chanting and we don't weep and our hairs don't stand on end, is it the fault of the name, or are there some offenses in our background, or something? At a lower level, and that is, as I cited from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's own statement, what? Trinadapi sunichena. So you have to move like this. You have to be able to do this, right? To go ahead with your head down. Instead of stepping on heads, let your head be stepped on. Bow your head before Krishna. Right? This is the focus that Mahaprabhu has given us. Focus here, Trinadapi sunichena. If you can become that flexible, and all it requires is understanding the goal. Then the things that get in the way of you being flexible, your differences with others, as may be the case, or the problems of the situations, all these things can be, as Mahaprabhu said, further tolerated, right? If you really have your mind on the goal. Of course, I've often said, with regard to tolerance, we should tolerate within a favorable environment that we create for our practice. Right? We have a license to do that. Create a favorable environment, and within that, there will be things that need to be tolerated. Right? So, at any rate, my point is what? That this braj, it's as a verb, the word braj means going, moving. So there's movement in braj, and in the ways I'm speaking about, and also in a practical sense with regard to the lila, because cows move and they need new grasses. Now it's true that they need new grasses, and one can make an argument that they moved from Gokul to Vrindavan because the area was running out of grasses. And I think it's mentioned like that in one Purana. But we take our lead from the Bhagavad Purana. And it has a different, it depicts the land of Braj a little differently at large. For example, when the cows eat the grass and move on, it sprouts up again. Right? As soon as it's eaten, it sprouts up. As soon as a fruit is plucked, another one comes. Or you can find a tree, a fruit tree, on one branch, there'll be leaves. On another branch, on the same tree, there'll be a blossom, flower, a blossom. The next branch, there'll be a flower. Next one, there'll be an unripened fruit. Another one, there'll be a ripe fruit. Another one, there'll be trees, leaves almost ready to fall. So all the seasons on one tree. If Radharani goes to pick a punanga flower to make a garland on a tree, looking for one, as soon as she touches the tree, the whole tree will erupt in flowers. And Krishna, seeing it from a distance as he oversees his forest, about to arrest the gopis for stealing flowers, his whole body erupts in flowers of horripilation, hair is standing on end to see this. Such is the nature of this place. And this is brought out here. So my point is this. There's negative impetus that we're going to discuss for them coming across, but it wasn't necessarily lack of grass, although that argument may have been raised by Nanda's older brother, Upananda, by way of saying, well, across the Jamuna, there's Govardhan. There's a hill. It's called Govardhan. That means that which nourishes the cows. Mountains are very, very special in the Vaishnava lore, if you will, Vaishnava texts and narratives and so forth, and for good reason. If you probably all have some experience of approaching mountains from a distance. There's one really beautiful mountain outside of Seattle, it's a town up north of us. I forget the name of it. But as you pull out of Seattle on the highway, and in the Goswamis, Raghunath Das Goswami in his commentaries, in the Jiva Goswami and Gopal Champu, they've elaborated upon this. Oh, Govardhan, all the 64 items of worship in the Seva Puja in an elaborate form. There are 64 items to offer to Krishna. So they describe how Govardhan has all of these items, right? The singing of birds is the kirtan. He has caves for bedding, flowers, streams of water, trees providing honey, sap, and so on and so forth. All of it. So Govardhan in this way is described as the best devotee. And Govardhan, the name means the nourisher of cows. Says in the Bhagavad, in the Purana, cited by Jiva Goswami and Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu, where it's describing the angas of bhakti. One of them is scratching the necks of cows, giving them fresh fodder. When the cows are pleased, the verse says, Krishna is pleased. So, of course, we're starting to talk about the positive impetus for going across the Jamuna and taking this big trip to somehow get the whole community across the Jamuna and set up camp, new. It's not like they got a house they're buying across the river and it's all set up and it's a turnkey or something like that, right? So there's positive impetus. We'll get a little bit more to that, but first to the negative impetus. What was the real negative impetus for the community to make this decision and proceed on the basis of it, to cross the Jamuna and relocate in Vrindavan? It's not just because they're kind of nomadic by nature, being cow herders, but certain things had happened in Gokul, and they're very relative to the title of this chapter, Hari's heroics. The heroics of Hari, his quality of being a hero, which is evident in the slaying of Agasura and Bakasura and this Asura and that Sura, is a udipana for Sakirasa. You can imagine when the young boys, his friends, who feel themselves equal to Krishna, see Krishna with a great triumph over some extraordinary circumstances. Some guy appears like a big duck with a big beak and tries to swallow him and so forth. Then his heroism is displayed, and they're charmed by that. They feel like, yeah, that's the kind of thing we do. And Hari did it. However, his heroism doesn't serve in the same way for Vatsalya Rasa. And it serves differently for Madhurya Rasa also. So in Gokul Mahavan, Krishna's heroism, at least overtly, is not displayed. And his friends aren't old enough to notice it. Because as of yet, they're not playing together. Not that they haven't met, but they're not going into the forest and where, oh my God, these sort of things. What might happen to them? Any number of things. And they're late looking at the sun. You know how you get, right? If she's late, what could have happened? Late, maybe look on the internet. Was there a crash? Should I call the police? Did something happen? So in Mahaban, yes, what are you talking about, Swami? Krishna slayed Putana, right? Trinavarta, Shakatasura. He liberated the Arjun trees. Are these not heroics? No, not really. Because of the way they were done, nobody understood that he had actually done it. He just laid in the lap or on the breast of Putana and sucked her breast, and she died. Now, we can look back at it and philosophize about it, having heard about the rest of his Leela, as Uddhava did. And then Uddhava makes a wise statement. He says, Aho Bhakiyam Stanakala Kutam. He said, who in the right mind would take shelter of anybody else? Who can go, I'm over here. Will he not notice us? Certainly he will, right? But this is Uddhava philosophizing after Krishna's Leela has been played out considerably, and now he's in Mathura or in Dwarka. But when it happened in Braj, it's not that Krishna overtly performed some heroic deed, right? That everybody could identify as such. Shakatasura. Somehow the cart fell, and it didn't land on the child who we had placed under the cart for protection from the sun and other elements. Of course, Krishna kicked the cart over, so it wouldn't land on him and it would break, and it was somehow a demon had assumed the form of a cart, right? So it wasn't clear that Krishna had performed a heroic act. Trinavarta, so a wind took him up, and then like a mini tornado or something like that. Then somehow he fell unscathed, and a demon appeared there, who was behind it all. So Krishna appears in his infancy, in his childhood, in his Kumar Leela, in Gokul, to be in danger. To be in danger. And so you can see how this so much serves as a catalyst for Vatsalya Rasa, who are the nourishers, the palana, the protectors, right, of Bhagavan. This is their relationship. And then the last straw there, of course, was the falling of the Arjun trees. Big trees in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj. And by circumstances, Yasoda had bound Krishna to the mortar. It's said that she tried to tie his hands to the mortar with the ribbon in her hair, but it was 2 inches too short. Meanwhile, the ladies next door in the neighborhood, whom Krishna had been stealing yogurt from and butter, and who had complained to Yasoda, who was in denial of it, dismissal of it, they complained, your son is stealing yogurt. Well, why don't you keep it in a high place? How can you blame him? Or they would make, well, this, that, and she would give so many rebuttals. She was in denial, but she knew they were right. Therefore, she approached Nanda Maharaj and said, "What kind of husband are you? What kind of cowherder are you? Our son is going to get milk elsewhere. What kind of milk are your cows providing?" Of course, she didn't take into consideration that the forbidden milk is better than the forbidden fruit has a special taste to it, right? This is Krishna's mischief, right? So that's why, of course, Nanda Maharaj was then forced or encouraged by Yashoda to select the best cows from his herd and put them on special grasses, and that milk would be for the home. And that was, of course, the milk that Yashoda was stirring on the stove, taking care of it. It's special milk just for Krishna. And a special effort has been made to get this. So it's about to boil over, and I'm nursing it. Let me put him down for a second and serve the milk, which is dear to him, Tadiya. And of course, he was upset with that, and the Damodar Leela proceeds, and so forth, right? So this is all, of course, the Vatsalya sector of the Bhagavatam. I said in the 10th canto, there's 3 aesthetic centers. There's the beautiful feelings of Vatsalya, covering 3-4 chapters, and it culminates in this Damodar Leela, which includes the felling of the Arjun trees. And then there's the Sakirasa Center, beginning here, where we're beginning today, really. And then there's, of course, the Madhurya Rasa Center with the 5 chapters dealing with the Rasa Leela. So these chapters, these centers really bring out the feelings of these sentiments. In his Gopal Champu, Jiva Goswami, I mean, he retells the whole Prakat Leela, as it's told in the Bhagavatam, right? And he was just, you can see here, someone who, like you said, are we reading the same book? What he's bringing out there, right? So beautiful, so charming. And at the end of the book, he says, the very end, he says, I hear, more or less, he says, I'm paraphrasing, in this book I've showcased the different rasas, the different sentiments. So pick which one attracts you and take advantage of the way we've written it here to help pursue that ideal. There'll be something in the background that causes us to make such a choice, right? But that's another subject. So, the point here is there was negative impetus in Mahaban, Gokul Mahaban, for moving on, just one thing after another, and the child, which was the joy of everyone in Braj, because he was the son of the king. And so the community was so beautiful, but for it to proceed and continue, the king of the cowherds on the march would need a son who would naturally take the charge of the kingdom. So as I said before, everything was perfect in Braj, except there was one underlying kind of gnawing concern amongst everyone. As Nanda and Yashoda, year after year, became older and older, but didn't have a son. I thought, so maybe this year there'll be a son, maybe this year. So this they were starting to enter into separation from Krishna before he ever appeared. And their separation caused the union, which is the birth of Krishna, at an old age, comparatively or relatively, of Nanda and Yashoda, and then to the joy of everyone. So he was the future of the whole community, right? I mean, he's God, it's another thing, but just from the uppercut perspective, right? The humanness of it all. Everyone was attached to Krishna, more than their wife, and the wife attached to Krishna more than their husband and sons, and so on. Sons, they're all attached to one another too, but the center of that attachment is Krishna. Their attachment and their love for one another is a sanchari bhav. It augments their sthayi bhav for Krishna. So all these calamitous events occurred And at the center of them was Krishna and his well-being. So you can just imagine how the community got concerned, one after another, and then right in the very courtyard of Nanda Maharaj, these huge Arjun trees fell, and just by Ryan's grace, the child was not not hit by them, not injured. This was the thinking. I mean, of course, some of Krishna's youngest friends were there, and they saw him after he was tied. Like I said, those ladies were looking over the wall and throwing rope for Mother Yasoda to add it to her ribbon, and each time it was 2 inches too short, 2 inches too short. And finally, when she was so concerned that Krishna would run away. She didn't really tie him up to chastise him, but she was afraid he would run away. So when Krishna felt that from her, then he allowed himself to be tied with the original ribbon, with just the ribbon from her hair, which is not strong as a rope that you're going to use to tie the legs of a cow or to pull a cow. So it would be easily breakable, right? So the idea that Krishna, bound by a ribbon from Yasoda's hair around a mortar, could wedge the mortar between two trees and pull down the trees without breaking the ribbon, that's just kids talking. They may have seen it like that, but we know that that's just not possible. Somehow, something's wrong here. Something's wrong. These two trees fell. Somehow, God saved us. But do we want to keep asking him over and over again, or is there not enough negative impetus that we should move on? So they had a council meeting. Upananda spoke up and made the case. Nanda Maharaj agreed, and despite the fact that it would be considerable effort involved in moving, what to speak if the moving involved going across the Jamuna, they decided to go. And from there, of course, this verse also speaks to us.
Excuse me very much, but you're muted. Oh, it's muted. It gets me. Hari Paul, can somebody unmute, please? Does somebody, maybe Madam Mohan, you have some Murli's Viber or something, or any other he will get, or you're muted anyway.
Showcasing a window that we can go through to enter into the Leela. That window, as I've said before, is after Krishna has killed all of the Kamsa's demons, before he goes to Mathura. Stop there. He's now his Kishore, his fully manifest. Stop there. Forget about Mathura, and stay there, and just day after day do the things that you do: herd cows, meet with the gopis, so on and so forth. Right? That's where we want to enter. Those apricot Leela narratives, where the 8 divisions of Krishna's day are described. These are apricot Leela narratives. They're based on the Bhagavatam, obviously, because the Prakat Leela, which is manifest before us, has its origins in the apricot Leela. So as we discussed the other morning, whatever's in the Prakat Leela, in some way, in some form, is in the apricot Leela. There's a basis for it in the apricot Leela. There may be no demons there in one sense, but there's a basis for it. There are some apprehensions that may arise about demons, for example, to create those types of sentiments, especially for your elders or for the boys. We're ready for it, something like that. So, in those leelas, one feature of them, these apricot leela narratives, is extensive description of the extraordinary nature of the Vrindavan forest, presided over as it is by Vrindadevi, who received a Siddha mantra from Purnamasi, by which she uses, I should say, to oversee all of the goings on in the forest. Extending on the idea of a concert, playing different instruments at different times appropriate to the circumstances. Krishna comes into a certain area, what may be appropriate for the circumstances, the forest provides it, right? Atmosphere, flowers on the trees, whatever may be the case, right? This is Vrindadevi. So the point here is that this is a very significant statement here in the Bhagavatam. Sarvakala Sukhabam is the root or the basis, the seed from which all of those descriptions come, and those descriptions are extensive and elaborate. See what they drew really out of this one word. Here it's the first time it's mentioned. Sarvakala Sukhabam. It means this forest of Vrindavan, forest of Vrindavan, in all the 6 seasons is full of sukha. It's a basic statement, but what is the implication of that? Chapters, whole chapters about the mystery of the forest, the different seasons, how the one season the excellence of a particular season, like here, what's happening. Excellence of a particular season. It's summer season. Summer is characterized by heat waves. Whew. Keep fanning. Excessive heat, right? Otherwise, it's great because the days are longer. It's hot enough to swim, so there can be water sports now as well, right? But sometimes excessive heat, it takes the energy out of people. People die from heat waves and so forth. Now Vrindavan, today Vrindavan on earth has been described, I think, in some record book as the hottest temperatures on earth have been registered there. It's right on the border of the Rajasthani desert. So you've got to go beneath the surface, right? into the sacred geography, to experience Vrindavan. How you do that? You go to Vrindavan. How do you do that? If you buy a ticket and go there, you have to go through sadhusanga. Therefore, Narottam says, if you go to the holy places without taking advantage of sadhusanga, if that's not your objective, you'll never go there. You'll never experience it. Right? They'll take you beneath the surface. So here, what's happening? One of the problems is that when we're going to move, it's summer, and excessive heat makes it that much more difficult. But sarva kala sukhabham. The implication is the season with regard to heat turned into like spring. Spring is a time for change and movement and so on and so forth. It's beautiful when it's not too hot, right? So this is an example of how the Vrindavan forest, although typically it was time for heat, took away the heat, and the freshness of spring arrived. So in this way, Vrindavan, with Govardhan in sight and same side of the river and so forth, provided considerable positive impetus. So the Upananda spoke about the negative impetus, and he had some insight about Vrindavan, Govardhan, and the positive impetus. And so Vrindavanam sampravisha sarvakala sukhabham tatra chakru rajo rajavasam chakrata arda chandravat. So what did they do? Again, Jiva Goswami says they went with ease. Now, one of the ways, as I said, a substantial way that they went with ease is they went with love. So I'm feeling for Vrindavan, having heard about it from Upananda, what it's like, what's that place like? I want to go there, right? That's where we get our impetus. We hear about Vrindavan, we want to go there. Bhakti Vinod wrote very beautifully, that he had heard so much about Navadvip. By this time he had become a great devotee and he had not yet been there. So he had a strong desire to go and live in Navadvip. And he wrote that he thought, when I go to Navadvip, people will come out of their houses performing Sankirtan everywhere. And he described it as just like the descriptions, the apricot lila that we have access to. But he was disappointed when he went. It wasn't like that. And he found that the actual Navadvip was covered over. And so he began his effort to uncover the sacred places of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes and make knowledge of that available to the public with his books like Navadvip Mahatmya, Navadvip Bhavataranga. He had a vision across the Ganga of the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And there, of course, a great temple has arisen, the Yogapith. So again, if we want to, once, I mentioned the other day that I took the bus ride with Prabhupada from New York to Gitanagari. And when we were at Gitanagari, Prabhupada was taking a tour of the grounds. And we went in the barn. And in the barn, he was seeing the cows and the calves. And we were all standing there. And suddenly, a mouse ran. And then he stopped, kind of looked at Prabhupada, and everybody was startled. And everything was okay, whatever. Then Prabhupada said, just see, there was the mouse, and there was a cat there too. And there was a cat, and there was a dog. There were the children, the adults, the cows, and the calves, all living harmoniously. And he meant to say, the cat didn't run after the mouse, the dog didn't run after the cat, and so on and so forth. He said, everybody living harmoniously, that is Vrindavan. The next morning, we were leaving, and I was right behind Prabhupada. He was walking to get up on the bus, and I was behind him, making sure he didn't fall backwards or anything. He was older. And Prabhupada turned around to me, looked at me, and he said, did you see it? I really didn't know what he was talking about. I said, see what, Prabhupada? He said, there was the mouse, there was the cat, there was the dog, There were the calves, the cows, the children, the adults, all living harmoniously. This is Vrindavan. And then he turned back and walked up a couple more steps. And then he turned around again the second time and said, did you see it? And then again he said the same thing. When I said, Prabhupada, you are Vrindavan. I'm seeing you. That is Vrindavan. So sadhu sangha, sarva shastra ko, lavamatra sadhu sangha, sarva siddhi hoy. And the value of sadhu sangha, right? Through this medium we can understand. So the inhabitants of Vrindavan, they heard about Vrindavan from the elder of the brothers of which Nanda was the middle son, and they got inspired. They heard about positive impetus, and practically speaking, the Bhagavatam is enlightening us here as to the positive impetus, as to the nature of the Vrindavan setting and so forth. Trying to put it in words, like we cited Jiva Goswami. What is the walking? If it's the walking is dancing, what must be the dancing and so forth? So Sarvakala Sukhabaham, right? They did something difficult, moving across with ease, because they were motivated by love, and because the Vrindavan facilitated it. Turning the summer, doing away with the heat wave, turning it into spring-like. And because they were driven by love, I mean, they're motivated by the love of trying to protect Krishna. It's some Vatsalya Bhav, right? As I mentioned. They want to protect, this is their whole motive for going, to protect little Krishna. So this is their love. And with this love, when you move with love, then you have wisdom. Wisdom is there. You can read the book to figure out what to do and so forth, but if you have love, you know what to do. What is the knowing of love? The knowing what to do. It's not researched, it's automatic. Mother knows what to do for the son in childhood, right? So there's a kind of knowing in loving that exceeds any other kind of knowing, especially when we speak of theoretical knowing. So here their love showed up in terms of practical knowledge. What was that? They turned their carts into boats. They turned the bullock carts into boats, and they floated effortlessly across the Jamuna. And when they got to the other side, Tatra Chakrur Rajavasam. Chakra. Again, the diacritics didn't come out, so Arda Chandravat. Anyway, Arda Chandravat. They took their carts and they made a half moon circle with them. They lined them up in a half circle along a straight stretch of the bank of the Jamuna and put everything and everyone inside. Imagine how big that was, right? So they're covered wagons, if you will. We're in a half circle to protect on three sides, so to speak. And the other side, they were protected by the Jamuna. A straight stretch along the bank that they camped upon. Different Puranas say different things. One of course, from there they proceeded and they developed Nandagram and houses and so forth. One Purana, I forget, maybe Haribamsa Purana says, Krishna woke up in the morning and talked to a goddess, and by the time everybody got up, all the houses were built, and it's possible in Vrindavan. So this way this is the beginning then, this coming to Vrindavan. This is the last, maybe third of the 11th chapter of the 10th canto of the Bhagavad, the beginning of Krishna's Seish Kumar Leela. And as we'll see, we go forward, now he's beginning to herd calves. So we'll stop there. Are there any questions?
I had a question.
Yeah.
Yesterday you were speaking a lot about reason and how it can only take us so far.
Yeah.
Especially in science, how it can often answer the question of how, but not of why. And my question was, how does our philosophy differ from, I guess, that question of reason, and how can that take us further from reason?
How does our philosophy differ from
reason?
From reason?
And how does it help us answer the question of why?
Well, what we say is that reason with reason we cannot arrive at comprehensive knowledge. The whole thing. We cannot arrive at the kind of knowledge by which attaining, I know, there's nothing more that needs to be known. And I don't even have to move. And that's just knowing myself, what I am, as a part and parcel of Krishna. Internally then, the Atma may move in Leela, in another dimension, right? And the body will die. So by reason, you cannot arrive at comprehensive knowledge. And for perfect knowledge, knowledge informs our actions, right? If you have knowledge that if I buy this ticket, I can get on a plane, it will take me to India, then you're willing to pay your money for it. So the knowledge informs your action. So perfect knowledge would inform action by which we would become perfectly happy. But from reason alone, we cannot arrive at perfect knowledge that will inform the kind of action by which we can be perfectly happy. Therefore, we don't dismiss the power of reason for knowing. We embrace it, but we put limits on it. And therefore, we say that we should use reason as I use reason. I'm using reason to talk to you, right? But I use reason in relation to revelation. So like these sacred texts, where do they come from? They come from the inner life of sages. And then they write it down. So this isn't coming from reason. This is coming from meditation. It's not they're something they've manufactured, but something they've experienced inward. It's difficult to figure out everything that's out there. What about the thing that's in there that's not even a thing, that makes everything go round, right? What gives meaning to matter? Does matter have any meaning on its own? Only if it matters to somebody, right? You understand me? What is a stone? What does it matter? It doesn't matter unless it matters to you. And what are you? What's the difference between you and the stone? You're not a stone. You're consciousness. In the broader sense, stones don't think. There are thoughts. I called it a stone. Does that mean it's a stone? I mean, I called it. So it's a bigger picture. The world is the thoughts of God. It's the thought of God. That's all. We're living in a dream of God. That's who we are. It happens to be a good dream. So we have to see the whole picture, though. It's not over. So hang on. It gets better. So reason alone, our conviction is, by that power alone, we cannot arrive at comprehensive knowledge, perfect knowledge. It's not a perfect way of knowing. Therefore, one reason can supplant another reason, and another. It can go back and forth, right, on a particular subject. You can't arrive at a conclusion of it. The world as it is, the truth of the world seems to escape or lie beyond the limits of reason. That doesn't mean reason doesn't have virtue or value. In fact, we give more value to reason ultimately than the materialist does. Because if the materialist concludes, as they do, and I'm speaking about materialism as a philosophy, that right or wrong are just some human convention. There's no real right or real wrong. It's just humans think it is. And so we may put that in place for our human society, but there's only physical forces moving around. I mean, is it right or wrong, right? Therefore, according to the philosophy of materialism, physicalism, or naturalism, ontologically speaking, or in an absolute sense, there is really no difference between killing a child and picking a flower, or even just smelling a flower. They're just movements of nature, that's all. And there's an illusion of a self that comes to think one's more important than the other. Now, how can you live that philosophy? You can't live that. That's like insanity. Hmm? They've come to the age of reason. They call it the Enlightenment of Europe, right? Now, it has advantages, it has disadvantages. So we reason ourselves away, and meaning away. So that's a problem. Reason unhinged from revelation. That, we say, can be problematic, and it certainly can't afford you the comprehensive knowledge that informs action by which you can be perfectly happy. Look at it. People have been reasoning about life for a long time. Who's become perfectly happy? How about a yogi sitting in a cave for 30 years? Didn't even have to move. You might think, guy's pretty happy, right? I've got to move here, I got to go there, I move this, that. Yeah. You're just sitting there meditating. What's that internal ananda that he's experiencing that makes all of the happiness that you could derive from gratifying the senses in one way or another? If you could take a syringe and collect all the happiness that all the species could derive in all of their senses and inject yourself with it, it wouldn't even qualitatively, it's of a different quality than the happiness of the ananda of the self. So we have some examples in human society. Well, there's only a few of them. What about a Jesus? He, like more or less voluntarily died on the cross. I mean, I wouldn't want to be crucified, but, right? Special people. You can say, well, there's only a couple of them. Why should we take them seriously? It doesn't matter how many there are. If there's one person that sets an example of a standard of happiness that exceeds anything that you could get by moving in the world and interacting with it with your senses, we should take note of that. What kind of knowledge is that is informing his action? What did the Buddha do? He just sat down, that's all, under a tree. But he didn't get up. Why didn't he get up? Because he was able to focus within in such a way that he found happiness within that exceeded any happiness that could be derived from connecting wires together or boards together or holding hands or whatever it is. Not that those are bad things, but I'm just making a comparison. So if we are to look in human society for example of someone that might be an example of perfect happiness, these kind of mystics would be people to look to. I think that's that we might become happy. Everyone wants to be happy, right? How happy you want to be. There's no limit to that. How happy are you? So we got something to do. We've looked outside. We see that some species are doing it as birds, as bees, as cows, as snakes, as humans. All this movement means they're not happy. You may get some happiness because our team won. And all year we've been unhappy, hoping they would. A little happiness, they won one game, they lost another one. They won. They got in the tournament, they won. We celebrate, throw the confetti, everything, and then it's over. What now? Right? So there's looks like it's going to happen, but it doesn't, right? And the team loses. The other team loses. So the other side, someone wins, someone loses. That's the happiness of this world. Let's say you win on the stock market. You know how you won? By investing money? Because somebody lost. That's how it works. You won because somebody lost. Same thing, sports, because somebody lost. I love it to see the end of the football game And they showed both sides, That's the Bhagavad Gita right there, There it is. You know, two sides of the same coin. Next year it'll reverse out, right? The happiest thing I won whatever the golden bowl, and the saddest thing I lost it. So these sages, these mystics, how did they arrive at their state of happiness? It wasn't by the exercise of reason, but it wasn't unreasonable what they did. They reasoned that there are limits to reasoning, and they adopted a trans-rational methodology, a methodology that transcends the limits of reasoning. By reasoning, they could understand, I should look within. Because what's making this whole thing go around is consciousness. So I should explore consciousness. And for that, I need to kind of shut down, to one extent, in relation to the world and all its offering and dictating, and the dictates of the senses, the dictates of the mind. Calm that all down. Take that energy and focus within. This is meditation, right? And then start to experience what is the prospect and the possibility of consciousness, the ananda that lies inherently in yourself, in the Atma. So, chanting, for example, it's not an exercise of reason to chant Hare Krishna, but it's not unreasonable. So these methods, Golokher, Premodhan, Harinam, Sankirtan. Where does it come from? Where does the chanting of Hare Krishna come from? Well, it comes from these books I mentioned. Where do they come from? They come from the experience of mystics who then writing about it. And the way we perform the Sankirtan, chanting Hare Krishna, this comes from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What kind of person is he? What kind of person is that? Uttering the name of Krishna and weeping. There's half a dozen or more biographies about him by learned people in the time. So how did he become so happy? This was the method to his madness. It's reasonable to pursue it, but the pursuit of it, the exercise itself, is not a rational exercise. So it's an exercise that I call trans-rational. It transcends the limits of where you can go by reasoning and affords you experience beyond those limitations. It's not hard to come to the conclusion that reason has its limitations in terms of affording us perfect knowledge. I say, if you want perfect knowledge, you need a perfect method. What's the perfect method? This is the perfect method. I'm small. I know that. The universe, the world's bigger than me. It's bigger than me. I'm just a little part in it here. It's bigger than me. I gotta adjust myself to be in harmony with the world mind, the world mind of Vishnu. And that means I got to get out of the limits of my own mind, which making me think I'm the center, or implicitly partner up with somebody and you're going to take on the world together, right? So physical necessity of most people in a way such that they can come into solve the larger problem of life as well. The fact that it's a perpetual cycle of birth and death and so on. So we use reason. We reason about these sacred texts, what they say, what the implications of them are, how to apply them, and so forth. You can see I'm a rational person, so I use my reasoning fully. The difference between philosophy and theology is reasoning about the implications of revelation, the lives of saints, and what is the implication of that. Wow. Sacred texts and so forth. Philosophy is kind of, we unhinge our reason from the sacred text and just try to figure it out with our heads, reason alone. And you're not going to figure it out. You're not going to, give me another example. When you understand a thing, you stand above the thing. I've understood it. I've captured it. You understand? With reason, we try to capture things, understand them. You're not going to capture the whole thing and stand above it. It's not going to happen by reason. It doesn't have that power. And it's reasonable to come to that conclusion. And therefore, rather than try to capture the reality, let me think how to love reality. As I've said before, it's a quote from an I think he was a president, Grover Cleveland. If you love someone, they'll tell you all their secrets. So if you look, for example, at the social religious system of Hinduism, it's all about venerating or revering the bounty of nature and the extent to which is considerable that we depend upon nature. So Surya Namaskar. Is it weird or stupid to pray to bow to the sun? Without the sun, where would we be? To water, make her into a goddess, bow before her. I mean, agua's vida. Right? Without agua, there's no life. I'm dependent upon these things. I'm a microcosm of the macrocosm. Whatever's in the macrocosm, I'm a microcosm. So I'm a microcosm of mind. I'm a microcosm of physicality. There's a macrocosm of physicality, and there's a macrocosm of mind too. Mind fields, not minefields, but mind fields, fields of mind. Therefore, some people can go into the field of the mind and they can know about the future. Things are written there. They can go into the field of the mind and they can experience subtle beings and so forth. Dreams are incoherently kind of entering into the field of the mind because the body, the physical dimension of ourself, has gone to rest and the mind may be active. So there is a real mind. There's a whole field of mind. There's a realm of mind. There's a realm of intellect also. What does intellect look like? You talk about reason. Brahma. The Hindus have depicted reason looks like Brahma. How do we explain it? Let's give him 4 heads. It's a big thing, it's something like that. And such beings can be experienced in the dimension of mind, in the field of mind, in the field of intellect. And then there's the Atma, the realm of consciousness itself, right? How to go. So there we have the world as it is has provided for us really from beyond the world, methods of knowing that that can take us beyond the limits of reason. They're available. So we take advantage of them, and we can know something that people who are more intelligent than us don't know about. You don't need a big intelligence to embrace a trans-rational exercise. It doesn't require that. But it is the most intelligent conclusion. That will be arrived at by what we call sattvic intelligence. So there's intelligence that's tamasic. People use it for criminal activities. There's some pretty smart criminals out there. There's rajasic intelligence, how to build this, build that, in the political realm and so. There's sattvic intelligence. Sattvic intelligence says, wait a minute, maybe I should sit down. Sattva can discriminate. There's matter, there's consciousness. I'm constituted of the latter. What's the implication of that? Sit down, look with it, so forth. So, does that help? It's a big subject. I appreciate the question. All right. Shishi Daji Gopal Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande.